Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Happy Recap Podcast. I'm JB along with EJ, and it is the 15th of February as we're recording this. And the best thing is that means it is the week designated by Major League Baseball and then summarily held up through the weeks, much to, I think, a lot of our amazement, that this is the week where pitchers and catchers report. Some as early as today. The Mets are a little bit later in the week. And EJ, we have made it through our first off season during the COVID era. Certainly one of the odder off seasons, highlighted, of course, by two major moments, regardless of what happens, whether the Mets are done here or not with their off season. I think the two main things to point to, of course, obviously, are the change in ownership of this team and the addition of Francisco Lindor to the everyday lineup in the trade with the Indians back in January.
Well, as I tweeted out the other day, to those baseballers who report hourly, we salute you. So just getting those first couple images of guys in the cage, of guys like Jeff McNeil and McCann taking their cuts, it was the ultimate baseball is back moment that I know I certainly needed. As you know, I'm a fan of the New Jersey Devils, and that was supposed to be my bridge from football to baseball, and they've been shut down for 3 weeks with COVID. So just to get those first images of baseball have been real soul cleansing for me. And you're right. Obviously, the two big stories of this offseason, and there's sub stories to each of them, is Steve Cohen's arrival as the new ownership and a new day beginning in the Mets franchise history, and of course Lindor becoming a New York Met. I think surprised a lot of us, and the fact that we got Cookie Carrasco thrown in on the deal almost as a throw-in when he's going to play a very prominent role in this rotation is just another side piece that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and I think one of the best parts about that is you have Carrasco coming in, you have the Mets then turn around and trade the contract of Steven Matz up to Toronto, and we certainly wish him the best, especially as somebody who was really good to this podcast back in the day, before his major league debut. But you look at it and go, that's how good, Cookie Carrasco, albeit as a right-hander, is everything that you would have hoped Steve Matz could have been as a New York Met. Again, I hope he finds it in Toronto. I really, really do, because he's a great kid and you really want to root for him. But EJ, I think, in looking at this, I mean, Carrasco, even statistically, over the last couple seasons, is right up there with $1 billion Bauer.
Absolutely. I mean, don't take it wrong. Bauer had a tremendous year last year, but if you compare the career numbers, Carrasco actually beats Bauer in a few categories. So I'm perfectly happy with him being part of the rotation, and I'm equally happy with Trevor Bauer being nowhere near New York City.
And I think, we, of course, had multiple conversations on this podcast about Trevor Bauer. And, when all is said and done with that contract, that specific contract, I just look at that and I go, I asked two simple questions, and I'll ask you the same two questions that I asked myself. EJ, is Bauer one of the 10 best players in baseball?
Definitely not.
Is Bauer one of the 10 best pitchers in Major League Baseball?
Arguable, but I don't think so.
I mean, he's borderline at best.
Right.
I mean, now, if he keeps pitching the way he did last year, the answer in a season or two is absolutely he is. But that's a gamble. And the thing about it is it's essentially a 2-year deal, because there's no way he's not opting out after season 2 in LA and going for bigger bucks. But somebody who was essentially a midline starter until last year when he became an ace in a 60-game season suddenly is now the highest paid player per year in the history of Major League Baseball. And I'll be honest, I am really having a little bit of trouble wrapping my head around that. Not from the sense of, well, gosh, Steve Cohen has that kind of money, he should have done it. No, I mean, heck, the Mets technically offered more money. But the reality of it is even then, I think I would have had to shake my head at it and go, what? Why? I mean, even with the George Springer, we missed out on George Springer, $25 million per season. And the question that I asked, I think even before that signing came down, it still looked like he could be a Met, that was Springer really worth $20 million more a season than Brandon Nimmo? I mean, is the difference in play? And there's no confusing the fact George Springer today is a better player than Brandon Nimmo today. But that being said, is he $20 million better? And I don't think so. And certainly, Trevor Bauer is not any million more better, quote unquote. Pardon the hashed up language skills there, but he's no more better than any Met pitcher, because this is a rotation that features the best damn pitcher in baseball in one Jacob deGrom. So he ain't going to be better than anybody in this rotation, unless Jacob deGrom has forgotten how to pitch in the last 6 months. And I'm going to say, wild guess, he hasn't.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it that Bauer is nowhere near the money that he's being paid right now. I mean, honestly, I don't know if I'd give Jake DeGrom that type of money for 1 year. And I absolutely adore Jake. It's just that is just stupid money that he got. You're absolutely right. He's going to bail after 2 years. There's no doubt about that, unless he's horrific. But honestly, you look at him and you look at his career and you look at his personality. I mean, one of the first things he does after signing with LA is complain about somebody approaching him for an autograph. This guy has absolutely no backbone and could not have handled New York. I think he would have crumbled under the New York journalists. I don't think he could have handled the media scrutiny. And I think he'll be happy living out in LA, where, let's face it, he's not even the best athlete in the state. So he'll flourish being basically, as I've been calling him, Trevor Kardashian out there. And as for Springer, I've been saying it since the name first came up, exactly what you said. Yes, he's better than Nimmo. On no planet do I think he's 20 million. And I was saying, when we used to talk about this, I was saying 15 million better than Nimmo, because I never thought Springer was going to get up to 25. I was kind of shocked when I heard that number. But no, he's not worth $20 million more than Brandon Nimmo. Look, I know the outfield defense is going to be shaky in games where we have Nimmo out there and we have Dom Smith out there. There's no doubt about it, but it's just something you're going to deal with to keep those bats in the lineup. And you just hope that with this pitching staff, they can pitch to strikeouts, which they've done, and they can pitch to contact, and hopefully they just hit them where they are.
Yeah, and I think the reality of it is that you have a situation too where Jackie Bradley Jr. is still on the table. Pete Abraham from the Boston Globe reporting today about that, and but the reality of it again is, if Boris got what Boris wants, and of course Bradley is a Scott Boras client, a guy that we do have to make nice to if they're going to be negotiating with Michael Conforto later this spring. But the reality of it is he is looking for, I believe, 575 as of a couple weeks ago. I think his leverage has gone down somewhat, because if there's no DH, Jackie Bradley Jr. has one choice, and that is, do I return to the Boston Red Sox, or do I simply retire? And I don't think retirement is on the man's mind, nor should it be at his age. So he's going to go back to the Red Sox if there's no DH, tail between his legs, probably on a 2-year deal, in hopes that maybe he can get out there as a slightly marketable player again. But if there is a DH, if that is resurrected at the last minute, and everybody seems to think it can still happen, again, at 15 million per over 5, I go with Brendan Nimmo. I mean, every single time of the way, because again, I realize, yes, we have an owner with an awful lot of money. I get that. However, I have always preached spending wisely. And going back to the original press conference, I believe I'm actually on the same page as Steve and Sandy with that. Spend wisely, because that's exactly what they've done. I mean, they would rather spend 30 million on Lindor apparently, and 20 to 25 on Conforto, than that money on Bauer and Springer. And I'm okay with that.
That's got to be the marching orders right now for the remainder of the offseason. That's the marching order. Those are the two pieces of business that need to be handled more than anything else. I am perfectly content going to war with this roster as it's currently assembled. I am fine with that, but I want Lindor locked up and I want Conforto locked up. And if JBJ does happen to have the DH instituted in the National League and they want to talk, we'll talk. But there's no planet on which I want to see Steve and Sandy get into some type of whizzing war with either Scott Boras or the Boston Red Sox. If the Red Sox want to grotesquely overpay him, go ahead. I think it's an overpay at 575. If he can be had for a more reasonable number, engage in the talks. But for right now, again, the marching order has got to be lock up the two big studs that you have right now on your own team in Conforto and Lindor.
And we can't discount the fact that, lost in all of this, it was Friday night on the 12th. The Mets were involved in a little trade that sent Benintendi to Kansas City from Boston, and the the Mets pick up an outfielder who I keep wanting to call Khalil Green because that's the only other Khalil I can think of in Major League history, Khalil Lee, who is a center field prospect and a possibility of being a fairly decent person out there that could be in the mix as early as 22. So certainly, and obviously you've got Pete Crow Armstrong. He's easily 4 years away. He's not played a single professional game yet. I mean, I would tend to think that he starts at the Gulf Coast League at this point. And we'll spend a whole show talking about the minors here at some point in the near future because unless you have a scorecard, a magnifying glass, and tea leaves, it's kind of hard to figure out exactly what's going on with the minor leagues these days, other than there's just going to be a lot more games in Brooklyn this summer. But the reality of it is that there are other little answers here and there. I think that from my standpoint, whether it be third base, I know there's been some talk about Chris Bryant, a little bit of talk about Arenado, who everyone says the Mets missed out on, but he wouldn't even let them talk to the Mets because he didn't want to, or Yankees for that matter. He did not want to play in New York. Nolan Arenado, as much as I dreamed of him being a Met someday, I accept the fact that he didn't want to come here. That's just the reality of it. Now, of course, you can go, now, why did anybody not want to come here right now? But, that's neither here nor there. But the reality of it is there will be third baseman available at the deadline. There will be starting pitchers available at the deadline. There will be relief pitchers available at the deadline. So the reality of it is for this team, I have no problem going into battle with what they've got right now. I would like to see one more reliever signed, just because obviously we've got Seth Lugo on the shelf for an extended period of time. Thankfully, it was not worst case scenario with Seth, because we've known for the last couple of years that he's playing on, basically rehabbed away the need for Tommy John surgery, but that can come back at any time at the UCL. So, I mean, you have a situation there with Lugo that you hope in his recovery he doesn't go ahead and damage that UCL further and wind up out for the year. So I'd like to see that addressed somehow. But honestly, given the reality of it, looking at where we are right now, right here, and the fact that they've managed to replenish the farm system a little bit, which is not bad for one off season and not a draft yet. They've managed to replenish the farm system a little bit. They haven't given up a whole lot in the two trades they've made so far. And the other part of it is that, they've significantly improved the major league roster, including adding someone who is in the top 10 players in baseball. And I would go so far as EJ. I think this is fair to say. If you look at the three biggest trades of the offseason, I think arguably it'd be Lindor, the Blake Snell trade, and the Arenado trade would be the three best.
Yep.
I would say all of them. Maybe you can make a case for Arenado not being there right now, but all three of them are better, more complete players than the three top free agents that the Mets missed out on.
Easily. Absolutely. The trades that the Mets made, and actually the trades all around baseball, those three that you mentioned in particular were great trades for the teams getting the players. And in a large regard, the send back wasn't terrible in any of those trades either. The Arenado one, maybe a little on the lighter side than the other two, but even still, you got to respect what those general managers did in orchestrating those trades and having Lindor and then hopefully locking him up. It's a franchise changer. I mean, you're looking at a guy who basically could step into the shadows of David Wright. I mean, you want your everyday players to lead this team, and this guy has all the makings of it. So I couldn't be happier with the trade. As far as Chris Bryant goes, I am not high on him. I never have loved him as a player. And you're looking at a guy in J.D. Davis who's coming off career years, where all of a sudden this guy went from journeyman role player who couldn't get regular time to all of a sudden he's given significant at bats, and the guy did everything that you could ask a player to do when given those significant at bats. I am not done seeing what the best that JD Davis could possibly be, because I think there's more in him. Obviously, he's shaky with the glove, and you'd like to see him improve there. But hell, put in the work with him and get him a little better at the glove, and let's see what he can do offensively.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for giving him a shot. And I think I think you get enough. I think you get enough play time if you make him the everyday guy until the All-Star break, and kind of see where you're at that point, and then you look around and see what's on the market. If you can upgrade at a reasonable cost, and I mean that in the cost of talent, um, I think you need to do it. But if you're doing really well with the division, if you're if Davis is having a great season or at least a very good season, I you know don't make the upgrade if you don't have to. Don't fix what's not broken. Right now, JD Davis doesn't appear to be broken. So I'm okay with it. But I mean, if you have an opportunity to pick up Matt Chapman, sorry, JD, he's
Yeah,
better than you on any given day. And that's just something, that's not that I think that that's a possibility. I mean, certainly that was floated by one of the New York radio stations last week as a conversation that had occurred. But the reality of it is that, I still put that on the unlikely burner. But whether or not it happens, I mean, yeah, if you got the chance to bring in a Matt Chapman, you do it. It doesn't matter who your third baseman is. You could have, a pretty good everyday third baseman out there, unless your third baseman is Arenado, you probably make that trade to upgrade because he's an upgrade of almost everybody in Major League Baseball.
I know the stat heads are going to get on me for this, and I'm sure I'll hear some beef on Twitter for saying it, but I'm a believer in chemistry. And I believe that this team has a boatload of chemistry. And I believe JD Davis plays a large part of that. He seems to be a great clubhouse guy, seems to be a great teammate. And I just felt like last year was just the shortened season. Not everything was clicking for them. And you've got Cespedes off the team, who I think was a malcontent. And I feel like this team could really have some incredible chemistry and some incredible players. So I am not quick to mess with that, to bring in a guy who I feel would be comparable to a JD Davis. Like you said, if Chapman was on the market, I'd be a fool not to say go for it. I don't know if he necessarily is on the market,
Nor do
but
I.
yeah, if it's not going to be a significant upgrade, there's absolutely no reason to do it. Let these guys go to spring, let them pour those bonds all over again, and let them go do battle with the other teams.
Well, and the other side of it too is in the scope of JD Davis. I mean, you want to give your players confidence, and at various different times, there's not been a lot of confidence expressed in JD Davis at third base, but he's got to get it. And if you're constantly talking about, your third base until someone replaces you, huh? I mean, eventually, you're not setting the guy up for success, and I'm not putting that on the Mets front office at the moment. I'm certainly putting that more on the fan base and on the media. Not saying build this guy up. Let's give him some self-esteem, everybody. We're not going Mr. Rogers here, but I'm saying, something along the lines of, don't constantly talk about his replacement. Let's see what the guy can do on his own two legs. I'm perfectly fine with that. I think the chemistry thing is important. And I think even if the Mets upgrade, I would be reticent to trade him. I mean, I would want him as a super utility guy, off the bench. I mean, everything he's a guy I want on this team, period. I want him on this team. So, I mean, it definitely comes down to, I'm certainly not looking to get rid of JD Davis. I'm not looking to get rid of Dom Smith. If there's no DH either, I'm not looking to get rid of Brandon Nimmo. And, all of these reasons being the same thing. Chemistry. I'm on 100% on page with you. I think that these guys are important to this Mets team chemistry. I think they're important to this fan base, because they are despite the fact that everybody wanted JD released the first 2 months he was a Met. Everybody's loved him since the day of the trade, of course. Now, but he's one of them. He's one of the few players that benefits from the revisionist history of social media Mets fandom. But the reality of it is these are part of the reason the Mets succeed. And again, I always point out to 1986, when everybody talks about how when the Mets got Gary Carter in 1985, that locked down the 1986 World Championship. And I always say bullcrap. And I say that as a huge Gary Carter fan. I love Gary Carter. I'm looking at a giant number 8 here in my corner right now. I love Gary Carter. So the fact that I'm saying this means I truly believe it. The missing pieces that won the 1986 championship were Bob Ojeda and Tim Tuffle. It was coming up with that platoon at second base and adding that extra arm into the back of the rotation. Keeping in mind that at that point, Bob Ojeda had over a 5 career ERA in the 80s. That's like having an 8. That's like having an 8. And we got a little guest star.
Daddy.
Not right now. Come out in a little bit, okay?
No, it's almost lunchtime. Can I have some?
It's almost lunchtime, Dad. Feed
It's
your
almost
child.
lunchtime. And I told you yogurt after lunch, not before. See you a little later.
Can I have some yogurt?
That's a good lesson for everybody. No yogurt until after lunch, not before. And she's still back there, isn't she?
A little bit.
All right.
Dad, I also need chopsticks. My lips are crooked again.
You need chopsticks because your lips are crooked again.
Mhm.
I'll see what I can do after the show, okay?
Mhm.
Think she means chapstick. You know, it's one of those things I think a shiny, happy, high production podcast would probably edit that kind of thing out. But you know what? I'm not gonna.
No, it's too damn cute. Too damn cute. You gotta leave it in. And
I mean,
this would be a good-
it's not like either of us are in cat face, but you know.
this would be a good time to teach her that when the team is on the field during the spring training game, you don't go eat your lunch in the clubhouse. Otherwise, the team leaders will throw it out on you.
Exactly. And no playing cards in the clubhouse either.
Right.
But anyway, as I was saying, talking about chemistry and all those different things, it really was. I mean, Ojeda had a 5 ERA coming into his Mets career, which is good for an 8 ERA these days, really. I mean, nobody looked at that. This guy's going to be a difference maker. This guy's going to be the number 5 starter. He led the team with 18 wins that year. So, I mean, the reality of it is you don't know who the star is going to be, even when you know who the star is going to be. I mean, again, Dwight Gooden is on that pitching staff, and Ron Darling is on that pitching staff, and Sid Fernandez is on that pitching staff, and your ace turns out to be Bob Ojeda. I mean, really, that would be like Joey Lucchesi winding up being our ace this year. So, I mean, it's definitely about chemistry. It's about intangibles, and yeah, I feel really good about this team going in. I'm wondering at the Pacoda, and I'm trying to ignore those predictions that put us at 95 wins and running away with the division. But I think that we have a solid team. I believe this is a playoff team. I think that as of now with 2 wild cards, I think it's depending on how the East plays out, I think we've got a shot at upsetting the Braves. But I'm going to give them the division today. We'll see. We'll see if that holds. I think the Mets and the Padres are the wild cards, and I think going across, it's Dodgers, Braves, and by default Cardinals, because they're the only ones that didn't cut this offseason. It's interesting. For as interesting as the National League will be this year, it's also very predictable.
Yeah, there's an interesting article in the Washington Post this morning by one of the Nationals beat writers. I forget his name right now, but he just kind of talking a little bit about how the NL East is going to be the biggest slugfest in all of baseball this upcoming year by these 3 teams duking it out for first place. And honestly, I kind of agree with what he said in saying that while everybody's sitting here and predicting 90 plus wins, both for the Braves and the Mets, these teams play each other so much that it could be a high 80s winning the division just because we're going to beat each other up so often. But I mean, you talk about Ojeda coming in and being the kind of the back end guy and taking over the reins as the ace of the staff. I mean, you got guys who have that potential in Carrasco and in Stroman, because I'm looking at him as an addition this year since he wasn't with us last year. So you're plugging 2 guys into the middle of that rotation, both of whom have had some serious success in the majors before. And when you think back to last year and seeing the Porcellos and the Wakas of the world taking the hill for 3 innings every 5 days, I don't think you're getting that this year. and you can only build off of that. And the strength of this rotation is going to be one of the big strengths of this ball club.
And I think too, you look at exactly that. I mean, you've got whether it be David Peterson, who is a very pleasant surprise
Yep.
last year. You've got Stroman, who I've seen the footage. I've seen what his stuff is looking like right now. It's looking good. I mean, gosh, I mean, getting get excited watching the pitching ninja. If you're not following Rob Friedman, the pitching ninja, people do it. It's like, I don't know, a fangasm for pitching, I guess. But we've seen clips of Stroman and his offseason work, and also seen some clips recently from the Mets on Noah. And I'll tell you right now, Noah does not. I mean, I'm no expert, but he looks like he's almost game ready at this point. Although, please, for the love of God, put on a shirt. But that's I'm being silly about that. I don't have a problem with it. It's just always funny that the man is truly allergic to shirts. But I look at that, and that's the thing. That's what's coming. It's always been this whole talk of, so and so will be back at the All-Star break, and it'll be like getting a deadline deal. But that one really is. And I have absolute faith that this guy is going to come back at pretty full strength, and he's coming back late in the season, that this isn't going to be a Matt Harvey situation or a Strasburg situation. If the Mets make the playoffs, Noah's there. He is in the rotation. And I mean, you think about that for a second. The Mets are going to have some tough decisions because they're going to have basically too many pitchers for a playoff rotation at this point. So, you look at what the Mets are dealing with going into this, this season, it's pretty good. The Braves, talking about that, we talked about the Braves. The Braves' big weakness to me is their starting pitching.
Yep.
And to an extent, their bullpen. The Nationals did a little bit with their bullpen. That was their big weakness. They have good very good starting pitching. I don't want to downplay, certainly, never count out Max. But the reality of it is, you look at the Mets rotation, you look at the Nationals rotation, and as good as the Braves is, it's just not in that same league. So I mean, if this league is going to be a slugfest, there's going to be some nights where the Braves lose some games to Scherzer and DeGrom, 11-3, 11-2. And that could simply be the difference in the division right there.
Yeah, it absolutely could be. I think both teams are going to have a bullpen capable of locking it down behind their ace starters.
Yep.
That's not something that I know Atlanta's going to be so ice cold locked about. So you're right. I could see Atlanta losing games in some slugfests to our aces, and I can see them losing games late on the lack of the strength of their bullpen. I'm not saying their bullpen is bad by any stretch of the imagination.
It's
but
just weaker. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not up to snuff with ours. It's not up to snuff with the Nationals, and everything's up to snuff with the Phillies these days. But yeah, I definitely think. And the reporter from the Nationals that I read this morning said he anticipates the Mets come out actually winning the division. So I'm gonna hold him to it, because I certainly think that's what ends up happening. I think ultimately the Mets are good enough and they're strong enough in the three key areas of their rotation, their bullpen, and their offense. I think they're good enough to win this division. The one big question is going to be defense. We've certainly got it on the infield now, except for possibly JD, but the outfield defense is going to be the biggest question mark, I think, coming into the season.
And I think, to me, for me right now, I put the Mets in second. It's close, and I could see it going either way. I'm not saying there is no way this is a first place finishing team at all. I certainly think that is plausible and doable. But I feel like maybe we're one player short, and I think that player is somebody who's strong on defense and potentially one more arm for the bullpen to, like I said, to kind of be able to carry the load, whether that's a Trevor Rosenthal or something like that, to be able to carry the load during the absence of Seth Lugo and beyond. I think that one more veteran arm in that bullpen could be the difference maker. But they're that close. And I would say, given everything going on, despite the fact that they quote unquote missed out on, three key free agents, I give them I would say a high A-, almost an A on this offseason. They've basically almost accomplished everything they needed to accomplish. And really, the only thing that's glaringly needing to be addressed is that was addressed ahead of time, because third base is a luxury. I'm sorry, that's a luxury item, but that center field defense, that to me, that's the only place where, and Almora is a nice Marisnik style, Lagares style piece. He's not the answer to that. He's a nice guy to have as your fifth outfielder, but when all is said and done, that's the one area that keeps them from getting a straight out A or A plus from me on the offseason.
I don't discount the fact that I think that veteran reliever is still coming. I don't
I
think
think that's
Sandy
possible. Yeah.
I don't think Sandy's done right now. I think probably if there's going to be any more acquisitions this offseason, that's where it's going to be. It's going to be someone who can be kind of that stopgap until Lugo gets back and then continue being productive for us throughout the remainder of the season. I fully believe in my heart of hearts that Sandy's going to try to make something happen with another arm in the bullpen. The outfield defense, I mean, honestly, you're right. It is what it is at this point. I do expect to see Nimmo getting yanked and Smith getting yanked for defensive replacements late in games
Yep.
quite frequently, and I'm totally fine with that. Hopefully, they've got a nice enough lead at that point to be able to do so, and it'll be a nice luxury that we'll be able to afford ourselves. But ultimately, I agree with you. I think this offseason's an A minus. I'm not dinging them for not getting Springer. I thought he was overpaid. I'm not dinging them for not getting Bauer. I think he's overpaid. And I'm not dinging them for not getting Hand because he wanted to close and he was not going to close on the Mets. So honestly, of the three big guys everyone's bemoaning us not getting, I mean, I don't really think that any of them were realistic.
No, and I mean, even you look at Real Muto, I mean, the fact of the matter is if the Mets had signed him back when they signed McCann, they would have paid more for him than the Phillies did, 3 weeks ago, whenever that was that they signed him. So, I mean, that would have been an overpay too. Now, instead, they killed his market and they drove his
Right.
price down so that when, the fans, oh my gosh, I can't believe he only signed for this. Well, that's all good and fine, but that wouldn't have been an option if the Mets were still in the market for a catcher. And I don't know about you, but I am perfectly happy with James McCann for the next 3 years. I am perfectly happy with what they're paying James McCann for the next 3 years. I like his energy. I like his game. I like his pitch calling. I like his framing is greatly improved. His defense is miles and miles above Wilson Ramos. And I think that the reality of it is this is a guy that no, he's not the best player available, but it's like we talked about chemistry. And what happened immediately that we saw it in real time thanks to social media. One of the few benefits of social media, we saw him interacting with Stroman and other players, and immediately like, oh yeah, this guy fits in. This guy is one of us. And it's been fun watching McCann. Not quite as much fun though, EJ. Take a little side tour here as watching Tomas Nido.
He has just been the off-season social media king of social media. He cracks me up, and I'm so glad that he is our backup, despite some people saying he's not good enough to be, which he immediately addressed.
Yeah, I mean he he doesn't shy away from the things, and he was the must follow during the whole Bauer saga, especially when when our old friend Bob Nightingale from USA Today, and if you want to read a really good article, Mike Mayer, who used to write for one of the Met fan blogs, is writing independently right now, and he posted an article he wrote on Bob, and it's scathing the history of Bob's mistakes on social media, and the reality of it is all Tomas point. I mean, with everything everybody was saying about Bob, all Tomas point said was WTF, Bob.
Yeah.
Uh, and it lightened for me. It was like at a moment where you just want to throttle somebody because it's like, I don't care if we're getting him or not getting him. I really do despise lazy or poor journalism and bad sourcing. I mean, it's gotten to the point where you should never feel about any reporter. Let me wait till somebody reliable actually reports it because I simply will not believe it with you saying it. And then within 2 minutes, three major national writers were refuting that report. And it was like, oh, I saw that coming. But at the end of the day, it's Tomas Nido has been hilarious. He's been fun. He's lightened the mood. And that's kind of the same thing. It's about the chemistry. McCann's got it. Nito's got it. JD Davis has it. I mean, Dom is the king of chemistry. Um, you know, Brandon's the king of charisma, in a good way. And all these guys fit together to what will make the 2021 New York Mets, and by all means, a contender. And once you're a contender, the sky's the limit, man. I have no idea how far this team will go. I just know this is going to be one of those years. This is going to be fun. I think this is genuinely going to be a fun team to watch, night in, night out, and they're never not going to be in a ball game.
How great was it the other day to see an article by about Marcus Stroman where he comes out and just basically says, "Oh yeah, Jake DeGrom, yeah, he's the best pitcher in baseball, and it's an honor to pitch behind him in the rotation." I mean, to see guys pumping each other up and hyping each other up like that, and then when the article went published and the headline was on Twitter that just said Marcus Stroman says Jake DeGrom is the best pitcher in baseball, Stroman goes ahead and retweets it and just says it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth tracking down. Last week, this all started with Stroman doing an interview with Rob Friedman, who I mentioned earlier, the pitching ninja, and it's worth tracking down. I think Stroman and Friedman both have it linked on their Twitter accounts, where Stroman talks a lot about his game and his pitches and demonstrates his grips and whatnot on the baseball. And yes, that has like a 30-second to a minute long diatribe on what makes Jake freaking awesome and the best of the best. And just to watch him rave on his teammate, that's awesome. I mean, you love seeing that kind of thing, especially when it's you're able to say this guy is way better than me, but at the same time you're not denigrating yourself at all,
Right,
because Stroman has a very healthy ego, and I say that in a good way.
right.
He definitely believes in all of his skills to the max. And the reality of it is, though, is he knows that's the best pitcher he's going to see during his career. And I
Right.
just think that's, and that's the thing that people don't understand, to some extent. Yeah, he's our ace, but, I've been watching this game a long time, EJ. I've seen some very good pitchers in their prime, and this is up there. This is right up there. We are watching a once in a generation talent right now. And who knows how long his window is there, but the reality of it is every start is special. And, I think most Met fans have figured that out at this point. But I mean, we're talking someone who's pitching Seaver-esque at this point.
It's to the point with Jake where certain nights when he doesn't have it, and you sit there on the first inning of a game that he might not have that touch to the ball or something's just a little off, and you go, "Oh crap, we're only going to get probably 6 innings of 2-run ball out of him tonight." That's going to be a bad start.
And that's the thing. When you see a first inning or a second inning go by and you go, "Yeah, Jake's not at top dollar today." I find myself, when he's done with that start, more times than not, I find myself more impressed with him than I do when he's got it from, inning 1 through inning 7 or 8, depending on how long he goes that night, because that's the artwork that you have to watch where he's getting himself out of his own jams, where he is, trying to figure out what pitch is going to work because his top pitch isn't working. His out pitch isn't quite there. Watching him have, basically, it really is. I mean, Tom Seaver wrote a book called The Art of Pitching, and absolutely Jake DeGrom makes it look like artwork. And sometimes the messier artwork is more fun to look at.
And what's great to see is at this point, Jake DeGrom knows he's an ace. He knows he's a multi-time Cy Young Award winner. He has to know he's the best pitcher in the baseball. But when he comes out of the game after 6 innings of 2-run ball, he's pissed at himself. He sits on the bench and he stews at himself. For all of the good-natured smiling that you get out of Jake and the happy-go-lucky attitude you see on days he's not pitching, those games you can see get to him, and you know that in his next start, you're probably going to see something pretty freaking awesome.
I mean, to him, he takes perceived failure. Notice I said perceived failure.
Right.
He takes perceived failure personal. I mean, and I'm talking like, from a Chuck Norris 80s action film personal, Stallone and in Rambo, that kind of personal, because you don't want to be the team that faces Jake DeGrom after he's had a quote unquote bad start. You don't want to be that team.
And that is the type of pitcher who you do call a generational pitcher.
Yep.
That's Pedro Martinez right there.
Yep.
Pedro would have a bad start, and the next team he would face could be from a completely different division, a completely different side of the country, but he would mow them down like it was them who made him have the bad start. It was personal. Jake is the exact same way. He's a generational pitcher, and we're just all lucky to be living in his world and the fact that he puts on the blue and orange.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, he is, he'll never be the number one pitcher in Mets history. That's just because of sentimentality and the fact that nobody's ever going to have the numbers that Tom Seaver did. That's just, I mean, those numbers are sick. Jake came up late enough, and the fact of the matter is the last couple of years have proved if there's one thing Jake's not going to do, it's going to be a 300 game winner. I think that's pretty obvious. But, at the end of the day, we're talking about easily the second best pitcher in Mets history. And he probably already is. And that is just, when you're dealing with 50 something years of team history coming up on technically, I believe this is our 60th season going into here. The Mets will be technically 60 and 22, but this is season number 60. So, I mean, 60 seasons of Mets baseball about to be in the books, and you're watching one of the two best ever. That's a lot of pitchers right there, man. That's a lot of people below Jake and only one guy ahead of him.
And when all is said and done with his career, I'm happy that we now have an owner who will recognize that awesomeness of Jake DeGrom in a timely fashion.
Yes, absolutely. I think we could safely say that the 48 will be retired. There likely be a 48 statue out front. Perhaps Citi Field will then sit at the corner of Seaver and DeGrom. So I mean, all those type of things I fully expect to happen. And I will say this, despite the fact that the Mets didn't get those three guys or four guys, technically, if you counted Real Muto. But to me, despite the couple of hiccups along the way that I really don't care about in any way, shape, or form, in the sense of his actions or not action. I mean, there's certainly some things that have gone on with the Mets off the field that have disturbed me this year, this offseason, between the Mets now former GM and the Mets former manager, currently the suspended pitching coach of the Anaheim Angels. So I'm not saying I don't feel anything about that. That's for another show, another time, and we will go in depth on that at some point. But I'm talking more like the goofiness with the stock market and fighting with websites and things like that. And to me, the honeymoon is not over with Steve Cohen. He and Sandy and are now our acting GM have all done, in my mind, what they said they were going to do. They didn't spend like drunken sailors. They made this team better. We're with it. We might win the World Series this year. That's certainly possible, but it's set up to be the next 3 to 5 years. This team is set up for long-term success, especially if they could re-sign the guys that they picked up and the guy they've got. But this everything he said he would do, I feel he's done. Now it's time, we talk about quote unquote winning the offseason, and probably the Padres are the team that did that. Blue Jays could also make can make a case for that. You certainly can make a case for the Mets winning the offseason as well, but there's no championship trophy for winning the offseason. It's all about what happens on the field, and that's what starts this week. That fight begins this week. And as the Mets take the field in Port St. Lucie for the first time, albeit mostly for calisthenics, and fashioning the latest official, game masks from Nike. But it's going to be the beginning of the Steve Cohen era proper. And to me, the honeymoon is just starting, because there are so many things going on right now that wouldn't be happening. And this enthusiasm, Can you imagine what this offseason would have been like still under Wilpon control with them
Yeah.
most likely flailing because of this economy and because of baseball and the fact that they would have been cutting as much, if not more, than other teams? I can tell you right now, two of our free agents to be Syndergaard and Conforto, I don't think they'd be Mets right now.
Nope. And I
I
definitely
think
don't think
DeGrom might have been traded too.
I don't think Stroman would have gotten the qualifying offer
Nope.
either.
So I mean, this is a very different team. So if you're saying, Cohen didn't meet my needs, Cohen didn't meet my expectations. Well, one, check your expectations because he met the expectations he set out for himself in this role. He met those expectations. I mean, really, the only failure I saw in this offseason by Steve and Sandy was they didn't get their desired power structure. There's no team, there's no vice president of baseball operations, GM, assistant GM. They didn't get their little tree that they had hoped for of power. So, I mean, and as a result, Sandy's more involved in our guest star that just came back. And I'll throw it to you here, EJ, as I handle this.
Well, yeah, they didn't get the power structure, and that's all well and good. Obviously, the Porter thing really threw them through a loop, and there has been the speculation out there that the reason they didn't name the actual president of baseball operations possibly having something to do with Theo Epstein wanting to take the year off, and that could always be an option next year. That remains to be seen if that's factored or a rumor, but we'll see about that. But yeah, they didn't get the structure in place. But that said, I'm okay with
I am
it.
too. It seems to be running okay. It seems to be running okay.
And Sandy Alderson's never been able to run a team with, I don't want to say an unlimited budget, but with a big market budget. So he's put in his dues to Major League Baseball. He was owed the chance to have a major market budget backing him and him able to making the moves that he wants. So, and if the moves that he wants are to re-up Lindor and Conforto, I think that's exactly what every Mets fan wants.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's run smoothly so far. I think the opportunity to restructure things a little bit, whether you're going to hand Zach Scott the full-time GM job, my guess is more likely than not. But I think that you'll still see the Mets front office make some hires between now and then, and I think that you'll see some things. I think Theo Epstein really. I still go with the theory. I think he wants to get into ownership or the commissioner's office. And so I think coming back to a baseball team at this point may be a step backwards for him. And I know that Steve probably doesn't want to give up some of the ownership stake to just to get a president of baseball operations, so to speak. But I look at this team and I am very happy. And if that's your worst failures, you had to go with a different structure that's worked over the one that you wanted. Oh darn. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, as far as executing his plan the way he wanted to, apart from discovering that we really need to vet some hirees a little bit better than we do, I got to give Steve Cohen an A so far, and same with Sandy for that matter.
No doubt about it. I have no problem with the job that either of them are doing. Cohen talked the talk, and then he backed it up and he walked the walk. He said what he wanted to accomplish. Sandy said what he wanted to accomplish. And in my opinion, they've accomplished what they wanted. So they're ready to get down to Port St. Lucie this week, and they're ready to rock. They're ready to get going with the team assembled as it is. Obviously, they'll still be keeping the phones on and keeping their ears to the grind to see if there's any other additional moves to be made. But if not, so be it. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I'm happy for more moves. I'm excited if they happen, and certainly if they're big enough, we'll do another show here. But I look forward to talking next weekend when we can say, hey, we're in spring training. This is the first spring training edition of the Happy Recap. And, since we started the show back up again and during quote unquote summer camp, it'll be our first spring training together in quite a few years, man. I'm stoked for it.
Yeah, I'm super pumped too. As you know, 17 being my lucky number because of my love of Keith Hernandez. Well, I can say that 17 days from today, Mets baseball will be on my television.
And mine as well. I am super excited about that as well. And hopefully by then, the fine folks in Queens will have seen fit to send me my Lindor jersey I ordered a few weeks ago. But I'm super excited about everything going on. And, I just love the fact that we have legit reasons to be positive. We're not, That's really where this team is at, and that is part of the change in culture that Steve Cohen promised us. The fact is, unless you're so dedicated to being unhappy, which some of our Met fans are online, that you can't see the good, there is no reason to be down about this Met season. It's going to be fun, and we just certainly hope that everybody's able to stay healthy, and we can make it through and play 162 games, and get to the other side of this COVID thing, and hopefully by then everybody will happily vaccinated. It sounds like we even get some people in the parks, 20% in Florida, and then we'll see what happens at City in April. But I'm just excited about fans in the stands, baseball on the field, and actual baseball actually happening.
You said we might have manufactured enthusiasm in years past, JB.
I don't know that we've perhaps I would say manufactured it. I might say deluded myself into having or wandering into extreme wishful thinking. How's that?
Hey, John Neese is going to have a great year.
I mean, where would we be without Chris Benson? Where would we be without Anna Benson? Oh,
we'd be short of Santa's helper.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts, my friend?
That's it. Let's play some ball, man. This winter's been cold. It's been long. It's been too hard. We just need baseball as a distraction. Come on back. And once again, to the baseballers who reported early, we salute you.
Absolutely. And we'll be back with another show next weekend. I'm not sure if it'll be next weekend or shortly thereafter, but we'll be sure to be checking in here shortly with our good friend Justin Toscano from Port St. Lucie to kind of give us a rundown of the things that are going on at camp and whatever may happen in the meantime. We'll, of course, bring up a special show if anything should happen in the meantime. But other than that, for those, again, we salute you already on site. And for all the rest of you, let's go Mets. Get to Port St. Lucie. Let's get this rolling.